you are currently in pre-production on Exodus, the new Ridley Scott film. Is that what you're doing?
That is correct, yes.
So that seems like another massive, very ambitious undertaking. What does that prep involve? How long is it?
We're starting with looking at locations. I think it was, hang on, let me be correct with you, probably like 2 months ago. And now we're in full prep. It's a big movie, but no matter how big they are, they still try to be very financially efficient, and Ridley is especially is very financially conscious. So we're shooting this film partially in London, on stages in Pinewood, and rest of it we're shooting it in Spain and Canary Islands.
Mm.
So first we looked at all the locations, and we scaled down everything to Almeria, which is part of Spain, and Fuerteventura, which is island in Canaries. Yeah, it's very kind of desert-like, looks like Sinai.
Mm. When I think of, you've worked on some massive movies, whether it be your collaborations with Ridley or the Pirates movies or the Tim Burton films. I just think, from an outsider's perspective, I would look at that project and I would think, this is just too big. It's insurmountable. So is pre-production a question of just chipping away and problem solving a little bit at a time?
A bit of both. You just look at the whole scope, your wish list, what you would love, and then you just look at it logistically, how you can accomplish it within the confines of the budget.
So take me back to the beginning a little bit. What those first yearnings were to be a part of filmmaking, and what drew you to cinematography in particular?
Well, I come from Poland, and when I was very young, I was just a bit troubled with what I want to do with myself, and I spent a lot of time playing hooky, going to movie theaters, early shows. Left home, and in Poland they had a 10 o'clock show for senior citizens, so I used to sneak in and watch movies. And actually, there were some great revival theaters too, and so I was exposed to a lot of old movies and stuff, and I figured I gotta do it, So.
Were there particular DPs or particular films that left the greatest impression on you?
Yeah, well, when you get older, you start noticing DPs and their work. Yeah, obviously, Greg Toland and Citizen Kane was a huge influence. Was like a staple of taking cinema to a different level. And then there were all those great cameramen from James Wong Ho, and then great American cameramen from 70s like Conrad Hall. A bunch of them are foreigners. Bruce Surtees, and then Vilmos Zsigmond, Laszlo Kovacs. We were just admiring them. Mm. And then while you just get involved in the business and trying to get a work as a cameraman, there was all the English waves with Peter Bijou, Michael Saracen, Ridley Scott, of course, and stuff. And then I got lucky. Yeah.
Did you, when you were first kind of embarking on the business, who were your mentors?
Well, it was tricky because I didn't have any mentors because I came to New York. The one mentor who was pretty influential was at film school in Poland still, was Wojciech Sobociński, was a Polish cameraman who was really cutting edge at the time, and he was doing all the movies with Vajda and a lot of interesting Polish films. So that was a person, and there was somebody who I met in person who had a bunch of workshops with us at school. He really stand out, but he was very non-conventional in comparison to our teachers. They were very kind of old school and old-fashioned and stuff. So that was the first thing, and then my mentors was just watching movies that I loved, and I never met them, but just watching them carefully. And like Storaro was a huge influence. Mm. Michael Saracen, Peter Bijou, Conrad Hall, but it was just watching their work. I met them eventually down the line, briefly. I met Conrad Hall in the in the park with my kids. He was with my kid when he was with his grandchildren. So someone introduced me to him. But it's always intimidating to somebody who's done all this great work. And like, what are you going to say? You know? But yes, I love your work. I mean, it's going to sound so hokey.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way talking to people like you. I mean, your work is amazing to me.
I even had the same story with Ridley, because I met Ridley through because I worked with his brother first, and I met him socially once because I'm friends with his son. And the first time I met him, I just didn't know what to say. I was completely quiet. So hi, and that was it. I wanted to say something, but just like I figured, like whatever I'm going to say is going to sound so corny, so I just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And then I went home. I was like, God, I should have said something. I should have talked to him.
I know exactly how you feel. I'm just so afraid to say something and make a fool out of myself in front of this person that I idolize. So I know exactly what you mean. Tell me when you started. Did you start in music videos, or when did music videos come in for you?
Well, I started when I came to New York straight from film school in Poland. It was basically a survival. It was just like I figured if I get any job in film business, maybe I'll get lucky eventually. So I started like hanging out around Columbia University. I knew somebody, so I shot some student films. Then I worked as a PA, just did everything, bit of camera assisting, bit of being an electrician. I did quite a bit of work for BBC, not as a cameraman, as an electrician or as a camera assistant, but it was for BBC in New York, which wasn't much of a training as a cinematographer when I had in mind, but it was a great place to be introduced to American English culture, because BBC used to do amazing documentaries. That was a great like opener into the world that was new to me. Interviewing people like Katharine Hepburn, Warren Beatty, all this stuff. Arthur Miller, a lot of scientists, a lot of very interesting people. So it was more of a life learning experience than learning the skill of a cinematographer. But it's like when you're young and trying to get your break, you have all this time, so you're just making your own movies in your mind, when you watch other films, So eventually when you get your break, then you just kind of try to throw everything in that you were thinking to be able to do it.
Yeah. One of your earliest movies I've always loved, Romeo is Bleeding. And you actually, you mentioned a lot of, when you just mentioned the list of DPs, I mean, there a lot of their work in black and white film is so striking and experimental and daring. So can you apply any of those kind of black and white techniques into a color film noir like Romeo is Bleeding?
Of course, yeah, because because the black and white is just like a great, everyone should shoot black and white, because that's you have to create everything with lighting, because you only have two, you have just white, black, and all the grays shades of gray. So even when we shoot color, we still apply to create a great composition, great lighting, great image. Every great image, if you just turn the color out, it's going to look great. And then there was a time I remember when I was already pretty successful in videos and commercials. We used to do a lot of commercials black and white. It's hard to believe. There was a time that I was working all the time in commercials, but my reel was all black and white.
Wow.
So even though, like right now, it would be just totally unacceptable, that agency has so much influence in that.
Well, but you also, I mean, I was talking to Stefan Chopsky the other day about Ed Wood, and he said, he found that you could probably make the lighting a little harsher in black and white and get away with it.
Yeah, that is true. That you have to exaggerate a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That you have to. That you can. Yeah. That you can go, but as a train of thought, I think great movies are just, if you take the color out, they're gonna look great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like on The Crow, we were trying to desperately make it black and white, but we couldn't. And right now you have all these technologies to desaturate images, pull the color out. In those days, we just couldn't. The only movie that was made at the time that color was desaturated optically was called 984, the Roger Deakins shot. And that was a Bible. It's like, God, how did he do it? How did he do it? So we made all the research, there was a whole, chemical process and stuff. But it was so expensive that we had no chance, to do that.
Well,
so we just had to do everything with lighting,
And you're definitely in something like The Crow, you're definitely not afraid to explore the darker images. And, I think of someone like Gordon Willis, who became known as the Prince of Darkness because he embraced darkness in his frame. But when you're working in film, is there always a question of, is this too much?
Well, when you're young, you try to push everything to extremes, Then once you've done it and didn't get fired, then you start a little bit, to start mellowing out, But in the beginning, we all were trying to just darker the better. Because I grew up with music videos seen with David Fincher, Alex Proyas. We were like young, arrogant kids trying to push envelopes as hard as we can. Mm-hmm. So when I did Crow and I bumped into Fincher, he said, "No, you made it pretty dark." And then when he did Seven, I called him. I said, "Oh, you made it darker, okay." So it was like, who's gonna go darker? There was the whole thinking. We were just all, always on the edge of being fired. I mean, Romeo's Bleeding, I was very fortunate because when the first dailies came out, all the producers were sitting there with like a long pause. It's too dark, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be fired." And Gary Oldman said, "Oh, I love it." So I was off the hook, But if it wasn't for the actor who has just also worked with great cinematographers, is into great images, I'm sure they would be on my ass. Oh, it's too dark. We don't see his eyes or something.
Well, this is another thing that I've been discussing a lot with the photographers that I've been interviewing, is that you want to be bold and experimental in your choices, but you don't want it to distract from. You don't want it to draw attention to itself necessarily. You don't want it to distract from the scene and the story. That must be a battle. You learn this once you start making more movies that it should have a function. Like when we did Prometheus, we did scenes that were super dark, but also we did scenes that were super bright. So there was just like so you dramatically go into dark world, but you're just desperately trying to see something, and then you just see so much that it's just overwhelming. So I think that the whole thing should be used dramatically. It should be. That's why when you work with good directors, strong directors that are not afraid of of darkness, you just use it dramatically. You just say, okay, we're going to make this really dark, and another scene direction, let's just make it bright, or I want to see his eyes now because it's an important scene, And so that's how you basically create the whole film dramatically, Mm-hmm. That's why the movie is interesting. It's not like it's lit the same way, Well, you've worked with, this is what's remarkable about your career and all the people that you've worked with, from Proyas to the Scott brothers, on and on and on, Tim Burton, very visual filmmakers. And I know there are all kinds of different directors. There are some that aren't necessarily as much into the visuals as they are the intricacies of the performances and all of that. But when you're working with directors with such a strong visual sense, do you feel more challenged, like you're being pushed more?
No, it's more liberating, because you can push yourself more, and you have the support. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's great. That you just shoot some some test, you show it to them, and you just can keep going further, and that's what's great about it.
Yeah. Tell me about working with Tony Scott.
Well, exceptional person, yeah. Exceptional person. One of the hardest working directors I've ever worked with. And a great human being. Really, really special human being.
Well, Crimson Tide is one of my favorite movies, actually, and
thank you.
And you know, it feels claustrophobic.
Well, it was claustrophobic. Yeah, it was a huge challenge because I was young, I had a lot of energy and a lot of my own ideas, and then you're working with a director who has a lot of experience, his own ideas. So there was always a bit of a fight, but like a creative fight. It was never personal. It was about what's better on the screen. So it was exceptional. Yeah.
Well, and in Crimson Tide also, you're working with two of the greatest actors that there has ever been. I mean, and you can't get more natural than these two actors. And I watch somebody like Gene Hackman, and Denzel is a lot like this too. But you watch them, and I've heard directors talk about directing them, and they're not exactly sure when they've started acting because it feels so natural. But I want to know from your point of view what your relationship is like to the actor. Do you get a sense from them of how they like to be shot or where they come across best?
What the really good actors don't. They just focus on performance, and they, some actors, yes, were very concerned the way they're going to look like. But I was pretty fortunate that actors I work with are concerned about the performance, and there's a trust,
Mm-hmm.
There's a trust. I mean, there has to be a relationship because they help you out sometimes. If you do something dramatic, that they have a little bit less freedom and movement and stuff. So you have to be very clear with them about it, and they're great. They're absolutely great. And if they need room, then you give them. But if you want to do something dramatic, then you tell them, listen, just stay really right here. It's going to be great. And they know. The good actors know. They know the lighting. They just look around. They just totally know what's coming.
Yeah,
De Niro knows exactly what he's. Before I came, they worked with great cinematographers before. You know what I mean? So it's not like. It's actually great because good actors are experienced and they just know exactly what it's all about.
With something like Dark City or any of your movies, do you reference? Is there a period of time where you reference other films or maybe paintings to find the look that you want?
All the time, yeah.
Yeah.
All the time. There's a discussion about this and painters and photographers and old movies and. We just the movie business is so eclectic by now because everything has been done, so it just can't stop with throwing references. It's impossible to put the camera anywhere without that looks like so and so, that looks like this and this. But also you have to be kind of subtle with it because if you're too obvious, then it becomes you just have to take somebody else's work and have your interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference from like blatantly ripping something off or being inspired by something.
I was reading an interview with the DP, and he was talking about the difference between a camera being an active participant or like another performer in the scene, as opposed to just being an observer. Do you have a preference?
It's really that is very much of a very much of a decision of the director and a decision of what story you're telling. What's the script? What's the it's very much. But it's both things are beautiful. I mean, a master of it is Scorsese, who can be just very, very, very objective and very, suggestive with the camera, And at the same time, when there's a great performance scene, he can just completely stop and just be observant.
Mm-hmm.
And he's actually, I think he's one of the best directors who truly understands that he can, he has memorable shots, big Steadicam shots, big cranes, big quotes from other movies too, of course, because he's obsessed with it. He's seen every movie ever made, It's like a computer who just remembers all this. So you can see that, but in the same time, there's a great scene in Cape Fear between De Niro and Juliette Lewis. There's a medium shot of him and medium shot of her, and that goes on forever. That's it. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Two static cameras. And then there's a lot of other shots when camera moves, suggests something, becomes very subjective, and then he stops, and all of a sudden it's powerful, he's a master of using the film language,
And his,
Ridley in a way too. Ridley is master of like the super wide shots. Big epic, like anytime he draws his storyboards, he draws this huge landscape, and then he says, just give me a fine pen, and he just puts a couple dots, and these are people, It's like, wow. So, I've been pretty lucky working with big directors.
Yeah, and also when they do move the camera, which Scorsese does quite a bit. He loves a moving camera, but it really expresses the theme of the scene.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's what it's all about. Sometimes people say, "Oh, let's shoot the whole movie handheld." I say, yeah, sure, we can shoot the whole movie handheld. It's not a big deal. But then it becomes like the one way of narrating a film. There's no pauses. There's no, It's like basically, it's like a music score that just has one rhythm and there's nothing else there. When you listen to sophisticated music, it has parts that are quiet, the parts that are loud, the parts that are dynamic, fast tempo, then there's a slow tempo. Everything is there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can make a piece that's just one way. And unfortunately, cinema right now, it's very, very, very predictable, and everything is very, very kind of conventional, formulaic.
I think that's reflective of the material. We're
that's true.
Yeah. Because I think people on the outside can always blame things like technology and moving away from the film medium, but I think it has to do with the story. The story is really king. Yeah,
and the stories are pretty predictable and flat,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you.
Characters are flat, so everything just follows.
So when you're working on the Pirates movies, which you worked on all of them, I believe, you've established a look for that world, and you carry it on in the other films. But did you feel a lot of room to kind of play with that look in each of these films?
Absolutely, every one of them we try to do a little different.
Yeah.
Push it further. Yeah, do it different. Yeah. It's actually pretty funny. I did this documentary, which is still in process, about Keith Richards with Johnny basically producing and directing, and we set up those scenes kind of with lots of candlelight and stuff, and it's quite an amazing film. It's going to come out eventually, and then we did some pickups with Keith and Tom Waits. And finally I said to Johnny, I can't just look at candles anymore. And he said, I can't look at them either. No, you've done it. You just milked it to the extreme.
Yeah.
Even though Exodus is going to have a lot of flame too, because that's the period.
Mm-hmm. I'm speaking to. I think tomorrow I'm speaking to the Bruno Debonel, who's shooting now with Tim Burton.
Yes.
You shot some amazing work with Mr. Burton too, but something like Alice in Wonderland, for instance. I understand that movie is almost entirely green screen. What are the challenges there? That must be the
huge challenge, because you just shooting actors on the green screen, and you have renderings, you have models of the sets, you have kind of computer pre-visualizations of the sets, but it still doesn't really represent what you want to do. So you do have to imagine a lot,
Yeah.
And you have to constantly talk to him, and then okay, so this is nice, this is this. And you have to do, the hardest thing about blue screen is that you spend more time just dealing with blue screen than lighting actors, because so that's the hardest thing. So you just have to create kind of an environment that gives you flexibility and of changing things, and you're in the same place, but now you're at night, now you're day, now you're bright sunny day, now you're just kind of, in the forest or something, so just creating all the shadows and stuff that God hopefully is going to interact right with whatever it's later to come. So it is a challenge.
So that must be a huge question mark for you when you're shooting something like that.
It's extremely frustrating, and it's just not the way to make movies,
Yeah.
I mean, James Cameron is a genius in that, but, he took 4.5 years to do Avatar, so he's in his own league.
Are you? You've shot a couple of 3D films. Are you shooting Exodus in 3D?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Are you? Do you enjoy the challenges of that technology?
Yeah, I mean, it's all it is just you have to do just an incredible amount of prep work, because technology is overwhelming. So you have to really be on top of it, and you have to surround yourself with really, really good people, because there's very few good people who really understand that 3D. There's a lot of people who are smart about it, but they're not really filmmakers. So you just have to find this group of people that understand, that they're very good in this stuff, because you need a serious support there, and in the same time they're filmmakers, so and you have to constantly challenge them,
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've proven that half of the rules that we've been told about 3D are not true, and it worked. It worked for Prometheus, worked for Pirates, and it's going to work for this one. So you just cannot be completely constricted by technology. And with Ridley it's great, because he's so visual, and it's such a second nature for him. The minute took me 10 minutes to explain to him how the whole thing works, and he said, okay, I got it. Meantime, you go to some training camps at Sony, people discussing and stuff and this, and then you look at it doesn't even look good. What are you doing, guys?
Yeah. But does it feel to you like, I mean, we've moved from celluloid to digital. We're in a 3D age. Does it feel to you like you're on the beginning stages of something exciting with filmmaking?
It's just a big challenge, and I'm not sure if the 3D movie is a real answer to movies. It's like it's a challenge. We've done a few. We're going to do one more, but it's not necessary. It's not. It's just it's absolutely not. It doesn't make a movie any better. It's just, I mean, it makes it better a little bit, because when you see an even good 3D film, you're aware of it for like, okay, couple of shots, and then you go into story, and then boom, okay, it's 3D, that's cool, and then you're back to the story.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of be careful that it's not gimmicky, It's like I don't know what the rules are, but it's just a fine balance about when it's 3D and when you want to push it, when you want to make it stronger, when you have to back off, because it becomes.
Mm-hmm. Before I let you go, this is the last question I ask all of our DPs. If you were to teach a class in cinematography, which you may have done, but looking over the history of film, what scenes or films would you show your students to teach them various lessons?
I would definitely go with classics, like Citizen Kane, Blade Runner. I just jumped quite a bit. Then I would go. Like for Hang Up, there was a lot of great movies between. I would just definitely show old German expressionism. I would show the Russian avant-garde, would show. There's just so many great movies. I would show movies from American movies from '70s, of course, Godfather. Then I would go like from Godfather to Medium Cool, which is completely opposite films. But that was a time when everyone was just trying, Definitely Conrad Hall with In Cold Blood. Film noirs, back and forth. They should watch them. all the Malta Falcons and so forth. I mean, those were low budget films.
Mm-hmm.
All the film noir genre was a low budget genre. So the guys had to be very fast, very decisive with the lighting. They have to create a character and atmosphere. And someone told me that the reason they're so dark is they didn't have any money to light longer. There was a lot of brain to it. I don't believe this completely. But quite often we're in situations like this too, that the scenes are so big and so complex that you have to really light in a very simple way, because otherwise it's just going to be too complicated.
Well, when you do these huge movies, which you've been doing one after another, do you long for to go to something a bit more intimate, like the Keith Richards documentary? I would think is. I
did this film that I'm very proud of, and it was my last film on film, and I had this instinct, and I shot on Super 16 because I thought this is it. This is going to be last chance to shoot on Super 16. It was called Rum Diaries.
Yes.
Bruce Robinson directed it. It's based on Hunter Thompson's early novel. And I'm extremely proud of this film. It was just two 16mm cameras, and we just shot it. It was great.